I've always known the power of storytelling, but this podcast has proven it over and over again. Sharing our stories, whether through interviews or in solo episodes, it reminds us that we're not alone. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife Podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. And midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Redefining Midlife Podcast. This just isn't any episode. This one is extra special because it marks two huge milestones for me and for the show. This is the 150th episode, and it's also 3 years since I hit record for the very first time and stepped into this incredible journey. Now, I want to take a moment and say a very heartfelt thank you. Whether you have been here since the very beginning or you've just discovered the show. Whether you listen every single week or you just dip in and out when a topic catches your interest. You are part of this podcast story. Every single download, every message that you send me, every time you share an episode with a friend, it matters. And it's what's allowed this little idea of mine to grow into something so much bigger than I could have ever imagined. And when I first started 3 years ago, there were 0 listeners. It was just me, it was my microphone, and an idea. Fast forward to now, and this podcast has been listened to in more than 74 countries. 90% of my listeners are women, and 86% of those women are in midlife. And from those very first downloads to today, Redefining Midlife now sits in the top 5% of podcasts globally. And that still blows my mind. When I think back to where this all began, it was honestly just a vague idea. I wanted to create the kind of show that I couldn't find at the time. And it was one that I personally needed. I wanted to learn more about this stage of life. And not just one voice or one perspective, but I wanted experts in health, wellness, relationships, career, and all of the areas that mattered to women who are navigating midlife. And I wanted real evidence-based advice and shared experience that could actually change lives. And I've seen that happen over and over again through the guests that I've had the pleasure to have on the show. But I also wanted something that was a little more personal. I wanted to hear from ordinary women living extraordinary lives. I didn't want to hear from celebrities or popular influencers with huge followings because I couldn't relate to their lives. I'm not any of those things, and I know most of my listeners aren't those things either. So I wanted to find women that you could see yourself in. Women whose stories would remind us that it's possible to overcome setbacks, to make brave choices, and to create a second half of life that feels exciting and deeply fulfilling. These conversations have been powerful, not just for me, but for you, the listener. And so many of you have told me how much you connect with these stories, how you've seen yourself in someone else's challenges, and how that connection has inspired you to make a change in your own life. And that's a ripple effect. It's a ripple effect that I could never have imagined when I first started. And it humbles me every time I think about it. Because when you change your life for the better, everyone around you benefits. And then there's a part that I didn't expect to love quite so much. And that's sharing my own experiences and what I've learned along the way, and coaching you on the ways that you can make those small changes or to take action and to start living your life, your best life right now. And this podcast has stretched me in so many ways. It's pushed myself to be out there, to trust my own voice, and to believe that the stories and the experiences that we share really do have the power to make a difference. All of this growth, the connections, the changes, they happened because just 3 years ago, I decided to take a chance. I took a big breath. I took a leap of faith. I put my big girl knickers on and I pressed record. And you and many other listeners came along for the ride. And over the past 3 years and 150 episodes, I've learned so much, not just about podcasting, but about myself, about other midlife women, and about what it really does take to create something meaningful in this stage of life. And here are some of the biggest lessons from the past few years. You have to start before you're ready. Sounds crazy, I know. But to know and accept that whatever dream, idea, or quiet whisper that won't leave you alone it's there for a reason. And you don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to have a perfect plan. Because those things, those ideas that you've got that you have to have these things in place, is just going to get you spinning your wheels for too long, or perhaps it's going to keep you stuck forever. This is what you need: the courage to simply begin. Taking risks, especially when you have no idea how it's all going to turn out, that takes courage. And putting yourself out there, well, that takes courage too. Doing something new, knowing full well that people may judge you or question your choices, and still doing it anyway because it's right for you, that's just a whole new level of brave. And on the podcast, there are so many episodes and examples of women who are doing just that. And starting this podcast was one of those brave moments also for me. And what I've discovered is that courage grows the more that you use it. And I've also learned the importance of seeking expert advice, especially when it comes to our health. I've had the honour of interviewing some of the top researchers, clinicians, and practitioners in women's health and wellness. Now, these are experts changing lives, not just mine, but yours too. And I know that this is the case because many listeners have sent me in emails or DMs on Instagram. Here are just a few examples. Through listening to this podcast, women have discovered that they're living with osteopenia or osteoporosis, simply because of something they heard in my conversation with Professor Belinda Beck. Some women have decided to advocate for hormone therapy by questioning their doctor, or by providing them with up-to-date medical information that they heard on the podcast, or by simply changing providers. Others have finally recognised that they're neurodivergent after listening to our 3-part series on neurodivergency in midlife. Many of you have taken action based on the solo episodes that I've done. Maybe it's journaling or shifting habits, or maybe it's seeking a different practitioner. And some of you have gone even further. You've said yes to yourself in a bigger way, and you've chosen to work with me privately through mentoring. And that's my favourite thing of all. Now, these sorts of actions really do blow me away. Not just because it is about me, but because it proves just how powerful one conversation or one idea or one moment of clarity or courage can actually be. Something else I've learned is our voices matter, especially in this stage of life. When society often starts to tune us out, I've always known the power of storytelling. But this podcast has proven it over and over again. Sharing our stories, whether through interviews or in solo episodes, it reminds us that we're not alone. It shows us what's possible. When you hear a story and think, well, if she can do it, maybe I can too, that moment matters. That's hope. That's power. And it's a spark that can start a change in your life. And I want to showcase these stories and experiences of women to as many other people as possible. And I've also learned the value of having a growth mindset. Midlife is not a time to shrink or to stay small. It's a time for you to expand, to unlearn what no longer serves you and to learn what you truly need. And this is such a rich season for developing new skills, for getting curious about who you are now and opening your mind to new ways of thinking and being. And recording an episode week after week and supporting women to unravel what it is for them is the reason that I keep going. And the power of consistency. Creating a podcast episode every single week, it does take effort. It takes time and it costs money. It often means juggling a number of balls in the air. Sometimes it means I'm working on weekends. Perhaps I've got to organise re-recordings, rescheduling, or there might be those tech frustrations. You name it, I've faced it. But showing up again and again, even when it's hard, has taught me something really important. The real growth doesn't come from doing what's easy. It comes from doing what's meaningful, especially when it would be easier to just simply walk away sometimes. Me being consistent has meant that more women get to hear the podcast. And another unexpected lesson. It's made me think more about others rather than just myself. Every episode I create, I think about you, the listener, and all of my other listeners. What's going to help? How will it encourage someone? And what will move someone forward today? And maybe one of the biggest things that I've come to know very deeply, something that was just a hunch in the early days, is this. There is so much untapped brilliance in midlife women. We are wise, we are strong, and we are talented. But we need the space to hear ourselves. We need support, encouragement, and new perspectives. And that's what this podcast has become. A space to learn, to reflect, and to grow. A place to hear expert advice, relatable stories, and real-life strategies. A place to feel less alone and more inspired. You know, I started this podcast journey 3 years ago without knowing all the steps. I didn't have a grand plan or a strategy for growth. I just wanted to create something that mattered, something that I personally felt was missing in the world. And truthfully, I still don't know exactly how this show will continue to evolve. But what I do know is this. With every new episode, with every single download, with every new listener who stumbles across the show, I just hope it makes a difference. Even if it's just one moment of feeling seen, one shift in perspective, or one gentle nudge towards taking a next step. That's enough for me to keep going. Now, I'm not a big name in the podcast world. I'm certainly no celebrity, and I'm certainly not an influencer who can pull in thousands of listeners by just showing up. I don't have sponsors like the big names do. I've paid for every single episode out of my own pocket, and I wouldn't change a thing because I love creating this show. Every single week, I get to sit down behind the microphone, pour my heart, knowledge, and experience into something that I know, in some way, shape, or form, helps other women live and feel just a little better. And looking ahead, my dreams for the next year, the next 50 episodes, are simple. I want more women to find this podcast. I want more women to feel less alone, more informed, more inspired, and more supported. Now, I'll continue to share my events, my mentoring programs, my Better Than Before membership, and any resources that I create here. And I'm going to talk about them on the show. And not because I'm always trying to sell or to promote something, but it's because I deeply believe in the power of women investing in themselves. I know what it can do. And these offerings that I share, they're just an extension of what we talk about here on the show. It's all about learning, growing, and stepping into your next chapter with intention. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Whether you've just found the show or you've been with me since the early episodes, I'm so grateful that you choose to spend your time with me. And if this podcast has helped you in any way, if it's made you think, if it's made you feel something, if it's made you take some action, I'd love your help in celebrating this milestone. It would mean the world to me if you could just take a minute or two to do one or to do all of the following things. Make sure you're following the show by tapping the follow button in the top right-hand corner of your podcast app. Share this podcast with another woman who might need it, and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or tap to rate it on Spotify. Those small actions help this podcast to grow and to reach more women who are just like you, who might be looking for something real and hopeful in their ears each week. And for every woman who has sent me a message or has left a rating and review or has shared the podcast or an episode with another woman, thank you. Your support keeps me going. And before I forget, I'd also like to thank my podcast editor who whips these recordings together for me each week. I couldn't do this without you. So here's to 150 episodes. Here's to 3 years of showing up and creating something from nothing. Here's to you and to all of the listeners who join me each week. And here's to making the second half of our life even better than the first.